Who wants to hear from the real estate board? Yeah, I thought so. So as Jamaica's property market grows, regulation and consumer protection become even more important. So this panel will help us to understand the role that the real estate board plays in maintaining transparency, accountability, and professionalism within the industry. So let me introduce our panelists for this panel. Andrew James is chairman of the Real Estate Board and Commission of Strata Corporations. He's also managing director of A.S. James and Associates Limited. Please welcome Andrew James. Gabrielle Gilpin-Hudson Grant is both an attorney at law and managing broker of Nautilus Properties. She currently serves as president of the Realtors Association of Jamaica. Please welcome Gabrielle Gilpin-Hudson Grant. And finally, we have Jared Johnson, who you met earlier. Jared is an attorney at law and legal counsel to the Real Estate Board and Commission of Strata Corporations. Let's welcome back Jared Johnson to the stage. So real estate. Yes, this is the big topic for today, and I think an overarching topic of the entire conference. Most of the people here, if not all, are interested in investing in real estate in Jamaica. Let me start with Andrew. What role does the Real Estate Board play in protecting buyers and investors?
Greetings, everyone. Hear me? You want to? Okay, good. Very good question. Happy to share that the Real Estate Board, one of our functions is to, one, regulate, to license, and to monitor developers, right? And in all areas, so whether you are going to do business, and Jared spoke to certain things earlier, you need to ensure that you're doing business with a licensed professional. So the Real Estate Board is that hub where you can go and get that information.
And what about the Realtors Association? What do you do?
Right. So people actually confuse us with the Real Estate Board quite a bit. So the Real Estate Board is a hello. Yeah. So thanks. Okay. So people confuse us quite a bit. The Real Estate Board is a government agency. It's a regulatory body. So as Andrew said, our chairman, they license and regulate developers, real estate brokers, real estate agents, property managers, appraisals. All of that falls under the Real Estate Board. The Realtors Association of Jamaica is a membership organization. So actually, even if you're licensed by the Real Estate Board, you're not a realtor. Realtor is a trademark term. So by virtue of membership with us, you become a realtor. You sign on to a commitment to our code of ethics, which goes above and beyond the legislative code of ethics. And you commit to ongoing education. And also you have access to our flagship product, which is our multiple listing service, or our MLS. So realtors have access to the MLS, which assists us with marketing our clients and marketing our clients' properties and giving them the broadest exposure possible in the market. And we have just about almost 2,000 members.
Oh, that many?
Yeah.
Just to add to what Gabrielle said earlier. So there's a difference between realtor and realtor associates. Realtor associates is the salesman, and the realtor is the dealer or broker. So that's something to...
And you can't practice without a broker. So really the buck stops with the broker.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a realtor, you need to be in touch with both organizations?
You have to be licensed first, and then you become a member of...
License with the board, then become a member of the association.
Correct.
Okay, clear? We're good so far? All right. So what trends is the board most concerned about right now? Let me bring Jared in here.
Hello? All right, perfect. Good afternoon again, everyone. So the trends that the board has seen, particularly as regards the real estate industry, I am at least pleased to say, is a trend towards compliance. So generally speaking, the board has seen, perhaps through its own efforts, perhaps through the efforts of the RAJ as well, an increase in the general awareness of the regulatory requirements of real estate salesmen and dealers. Now, that is not to say that the entire landscape is without essentially problems, which we do encounter still on a day-to-day basis, being the regulator, exercising our vigilance. But we are definitely seeing a greater capacity for and a greater intention towards persons where they don't have the correct information or they're not sure what is required of them, for example, with respect to a particular transaction, or what is required of them with respect to their continuing professional development. Persons are reaching out to the real estate board in droves. The number of calls and emails that come in on a day-to-day basis, the board is stretched thin essentially to respond to all of those queries. But it's something that we do welcome because, as I said earlier, prevention is better than cure. We certainly do appreciate the professionals in a wider context taking steps towards regularizing themselves. We no longer have to envision times before the Duffus Commission in the 80s when real estate was the Wild West. We're now in a situation where persons see this as a reputable profession and they want to take all steps possible humanly in order to ensure the integrity of that profession. And that's something that the board welcomes, and I'm certainly our chairman as well as the president of the RAJ welcome as well.
Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to say that it's important that people are aware of the industry that we operate in. And so once you're aware, then you can make better decisions. And so the real estate board is not waiting for you to come to them. We are coming to you. So by being here, we are sharing the news, what we are here about. Because when you know that there's a regulator who can protect you, you can make better decisions. You won't just meet someone that advertises on TikTok that I have a house for $30,000, a 6-bedroom house with swimming pool, and you run ahead and say, wow, what a good deal. Right? So it's important. We're coming to you to share with you. And when in doubt, contact the real estate board to ensure that this person is licensed. And if there's something should go wrong, we're there to protect you.
And you have a website where you can
We
go
do,
and
yes.
check the names, right?
Yes.
What's
reb.gov.jm.
reb.gov.jm.
Yes.
You can type in anybody's name and see if they're registered.
Correct.
Yes.
Perfect, make things easy. So a question for Gabrielle then. How has professionalism within Jamaica's real estate industry really evolved or developed over the past decade?
That's a good question. I have seen a trend where persons that are in the industry take education very seriously. So the real estate board would have continuing professional development courses, but even above and beyond what the real estate board offers to licensed professionals, our members also undergo lots of different webinars. So we have webinars about negotiation. We're just launching a designation course in green. So basically, and that's not open to only realtors, but also persons that want that green designation that's coming from the National Association of Realtors. So you know more about green investing, green development, and so on. We do networking events as well. So it's a very collegiate profession, and we are very advanced because I'm not sure if persons are aware, but if you look across the Caribbean, many of the other islands have no legislation. And so as investors looking to come and do business, you should be encouraged by the fact that entities like the Real Estate Board or the RAJ exist, because in islands like Barbados, you don't have to do anything to get up and call yourself a real estate agent.
Really?
Yeah, there's no licensing framework. There's nothing protecting persons who are purchasers in pre-construction contracts. So if you're buying off plan, there's no legislation protecting you. So Jamaica is very advanced in our regulatory framework for real estate, and our professionals just are continuing to get better. The Real Estate Board just launched a collaboration with CCIM, and so we'll be now offering that commercial designation so that, the education is just continuing and continuing so that we can have a truly sophisticated first world real estate markets.
I feel like it's absolutely necessary in Jamaica though, because, well, I hate to say, scammer them there, right? So we need to have that protection, especially here.
For sure. I mean, even as Chair said, you see it on TikTok, you see it on Instagram, and it's concerning. You know, technically speaking, it's actually outside of the remit of the real estate board because that's a criminal offense once you're practicing real estate without a license. So these things actually are reported to the police, and MOCO and other bodies of the police will investigate into it. But again, especially in the era of Google, AI, persons want to go online and look up and try to do real estate and real estate business or invest and find property by themselves. But the truth is that real estate is a people business, and you should go and reach out to a professional that knows that segment of the market, knows that area of the island, has experience in what you want to do. Don't just try to do a thing, because it really does come back to bite you in the long run.
Are you guys aware of the TikTok scams? No? Well, let me tell you what's been going on. So one of the popular scams is that you will have your licensed real estate dealers. They have maybe their TikTok page, their Instagram page, their Facebook page, where they're advertising their properties. And then the scammers will come, take those videos, put them on their own page, and represent them as if they are the ones representing this property. Change the phone number, change the email address. And then what they will tell you when you reach, first of all, one of the things that they do is they put it at a very, very ridiculously low price. So you'll be like, a 2-bedroom in Mona for $60,000 a month? Wow, that sounds too good to be true. It is. And then they will tell you that you need, in order to view the property, you need to send them a deposit.
Red flag.
Just to view the property. Yeah. And so many people have fallen for this scam. And then when you try to make the arrangement to view the property, it doesn't exist. Yeah. Nobody exists like that. Or if you reverse image search, you'll see that this property is represented by somebody else completely. And it's that's just one of many, many scams. So the lesson here is to do business with the licensed realtors. Go to reb.gov.jm. Make sure that this person is actually registered and is who they are purporting to be. And yeah, don't fall for any other online
just
scams.
To add, is that each realtor or realtor associate should have an ID. Mm-hmm. So when you go to meet that, you should ask them to show you that real estate board ID. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm saying each realtor or realtor associate should have an ID. Mm-hmm. So say, for example, you meet someone online and so on, you go to look at the property, ask to see their ID. The real estate board ID. Not
only that, but some of the scams have gotten so sophisticated where they actually will use your name. So they will know, okay, Gabby is a licensed realtor, so they're going to say that they're Gabby. So I also encourage you, even when you're doing business from abroad, have a FaceTime, have a WhatsApp video. Even though we're not face-to-face in person, that doesn't mean that you can't have a face-to-face conversation to actually verify that it's the real person speaking to you and the photo matches back to the ID or matches back to the photos of them on their official websites and on their official contact information.
Very wise. So Jared, what legal protections do buyers actually have if a deal goes wrong?
So it is dependent on a number of factors. So firstly, it is dependent on what exactly does go wrong. Now, I did allude to it earlier, but I just want to reiterate it. As a purchaser in a real estate deal in Jamaica, this might not be what is in mode in other jurisdictions, but certainly in Jamaica, it is indispensably important that you seek legal advice. That is the very first thing that I can recommend unambiguously to any person who is entering a land transaction in Jamaica, because a professional attorney at law is who will be able to, as best as possible, afford you certain protections in the form of making the pre and post contract inquiries. Even the very search of the REB's register, that is something that, for example, your attorney can do for you if it is that you're not physically in Jamaica or otherwise able. But notwithstanding that, completely without prejudice to that, the board in the form of its regulatory toolkit, does have a number of enforcement protocols, essentially, when it is, for example, that a real estate salesman or a dealer engages in conduct that is aberrant or illegal or unethical. So if it is, for example, that you find yourself on the wrong end of a deal, a wrong end of a interaction with a licensed professional. And remember that we're not talking about the scammers on TikTok who are not licensed in any event. We're talking about a licensed professional, somebody who holds a license issued by the real estate board. A purchaser can and ought to, if it is that they do believe, they have been wronged by virtue of a professional's improper conduct, lodge a formal complaint with the real estate board. And once that is done, that triggers an enforcement mechanism that begins with the board's inspectors, who will then take steps on your behalf to essentially investigate your complaint. So let us say, for example, a purchaser believes that they were misled by just misrepresentation or fraud on the part of the real estate dealer or salesman before the transaction closed. Not only can that purchaser perhaps have lawful remedies outside of the real estate board at the common law, they could also very well have a formal complaint put before the real estate board for the board to then investigate the complaint and hear the matter to see whether or not this conduct of the dealer amounts to a standard where perhaps they should be ejected from the profession. And that is guided not only by the letter of the legislation, but also the code of ethics, which essentially compiles standards above and beyond the bare minimum of what is legally acceptable for dealers and salesmen. It is essentially a codified list of standards for the profession, where if they fail to meet those standards, the consequences can be quite grave on their behalf. And then in addition to that, if the actions or perhaps even inactions of the real estate dealer or salesman are of such a nature that they now rise to the criminal standard, the board can indeed and does indeed take steps to liaise with the relevant authorities. For example, the FID, the police. I heard the RJ president refer earlier to MOCA. With all of those authorities to, as best as possible, take steps towards getting a substantial remedy for not only the purchasers, but also to protect the public interest, because these are persons who are interfacing with a very oftentimes vulnerable subset of the Jamaican populace. And they are doing so at a time in their lives, purchasing real estate, which often will be the biggest investment or purchase of their lifetime. Oftentimes their life savings are at stake. So those are some ways, certainly, that I think purchasers can, throughout the process and even before the process begins, or even towards the end of the process, if they feel that they have been wronged, can take in order to avail themselves of a particular remedy.
On one of the previous panels, we were talking about developments that may be never finished, start but never finished. You invested pre-construction,
Right.
and it never came to completion.
Right.
What do you do in that situation?
All right, I'm glad that you asked that. So now we're segueing into real estate developers and the obligations of the registered developer. Now, when a developer enters into these prepayment or pre-construction contracts with purchasers, they accept money in the form of deposits or further payments, whatever the term may be. That money can, under certain circumstances, be withdrawn from the trust account or the escrow account to be put into the scheme. Now, if after that happens, the scheme, unfortunately, becomes inundated with problems, let us say, for example, financial difficulties on the part of the developer, they simply cannot, from an economic standpoint, deliver a finished product, but the purchaser's money is already in the ground. It could be for any number of reasons. It could be for mismanagement. It could be theft on the part of some agent of the developer. Poor planning. It could be anything. What the board can do at that stage is, having regard to the nature of the contracts and having regard to the nature of the breach of those contracts in the form of the developer not being able to produce a finished product, the board can take steps to declare the scheme a failure and exercise the charge that it has registered on the development lands, which the developer is required to register on those lands by law. And in doing so, the board can take a role that is sort of analogous to a bank or a financial institution when it is that a mortgagor, who is a person who borrows money from the bank, defaults on a mortgage. So in the same way that a bank can foreclose on a property and sell it by private treaty or public auction in order to recoup those mortgage funds, the board can take certain steps to step into that development, declare it failed, and exercise its charge, enforce its charge in a way to sell the development lands in order to then raise funds to as best as possible, reinstate the purchasers. And that is a particularly powerful remedy in circumstances where the trust account has essentially been drained. There's no more monies for the board to go to financial institution A, let's call them Blue Bank. Go to Blue Bank and say, Blue Bank, please wire over all money that is in the trust account because this scheme is a failure. Because the money has already gone into the ground, the board now has to take that extraordinary step to declare the scheme failed and essentially sell the development lands in a bid to, as far as possible, reinstate the purchasers on a financial level.
So Andrew, what should every buyer verify before transferring a deposit?
Well, first I should visit the real estate board website to confirm that is a registered development and also it's a registered developer. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. And if you don't do it, ask your attorney to do it. Okay, so that's before, to confirm that if something should go wrong, at least you're protected, somewhat protected. Okay.
You want to add something here, Gabrielle?
Sure. So, sorry.
It's on.
Yeah, it went off. Okay, so Mr. Johnson had made a good point earlier about an attorney at law, right? And I want to circle back there because not all attorneys are real estate attorneys. So not only do you need to protect yourself and get an attorney at law, we see a troubling trend where a lot of time purchasers, to save money, say, sure, it's a standard contract from a developer, I'm not going to use an attorney. Big mistake, because the reason pre-construction properties are registered with the real estate board is because it's a risky transaction. The development can fail. So not only do you need to get an attorney, but you need an attorney that actually practices in real estate and is familiar with the Real Estate Dealers and Developers Act and all of the obligations developers have to follow so that they can provide that advice to you, because these are very technical contracts. And most of the time, the standard version of them is not in the best interest of the purchaser. It has a lot of predatory clauses that the developer may put in there. So if you don't have an attorney to say, watch out for this or that, you may find yourself in a position where you've signed off to these, you've agreed to these terms, right? So that's the first thing I just wanted to emphasize and circle back to. Make sure that the developer is registered with the real estate board, and then make sure that you have done your checks about the history of this developer. Who is the contractor? Who is building it? Have you gone and seen it? What information do you have? A lot of times people just try to do a development, so that's some of the advice that the professionals guide you on, so that you can do your homework before entering into some of these contracts and making sure, okay, the guardrails are in place for me to be investing in this property, because as Mr. Johnson said, these developments can fail, and there have been instances where the real estate board has to step in and say, okay, I'm going to try my best to recover as much as I can for the purchasers so that they can get back the funds that they've put into the project. So I just wanted to add that very, very important point that sometimes people overlook.
Andrew, earlier we were talking about the issue of real estate fraud. I gave one example. The audience was largely unaware, apparently, that this is so prevalent in Jamaica. Do you have any other examples of types of real estate fraud that happen here that people need to be aware of?
There's one with the sign over in Portland. Oh, yes. There's one. So an agent put up a sign, a for sale sign, in Stony Hill, and they got a call that the same sign was in Portland at another property with a different number, right? So it's important that not just the number you see on a sign or on a
What did the
TikTok.
sign say? So a sign.
No, so basically, the same agent information is on the sign except the number, the contact number.
It's
So
a
it
for
looks
sale
legit.
sign. So it's by a building?
Yes, it's on the property. It's a vacant land, but
Vacant
they
property.
changed the
Ah.
phone number, the contact number. So that's what is important.
Yeah, so they're using the branding of that real estate company to look legitimate. So they're saying, okay, well, this is a reputable real estate firm. We see their sign. We're gonna call and ask, and so unbeknownst to them, they will send these people your information. Because also, just so that you know, when you reach out to a realtor or a real estate realtor associate in Jamaica, they're going to ask you for certain know your client information. They're not being nosy, but they need to know, because we need to know who you are. We need to know what your source of funds are. These are the things for your protection and the professionals' protection to make sure that we're not dealing with fraudsters. So again, when somebody impersonates an agent, they may ask you for that sensitive information to essentially use it for other nefarious purposes.
Like ID.
Yep, so they're going to ask you for your ID, your TRN, your birthday, all of these things, and they can use that in other types of fraudulent activities. So you have to be very discerning before you part with your information or before you pay. Realtors never ask you to pay them before you go see a property, like before you go do any of that. Go check the real estate board's website, see if they're on there, see if the photo that comes up on Google, or if you know better yet, they have a verified social media page. Yeah, this mic keeps going on and off, thanks. If they have a verified social media page, etc., verify the identity of the person, because that's a big thing, right? And it's getting more and more sophisticated. So again, the right professionals and asking the right questions are super, super important.
I have a feeling that we have a lot of questions for this panel. So I'm gonna wrap up pretty early so that we can take more questions. But the final question from me then, what excites you all the most about the future of real estate in Jamaica? I'll start with Jared.
So for me personally, I think what excites me is a trend that looks beyond the capital city. It seems that, as for example, the infrastructure, the road networks, highways, etc., those tributaries expand throughout the island. It appears that places on the island that were once deemed almost desolate are now being reinvigorated. We're seeing, well, I have at least seen applications from developers with respect to places in the island that I was not even aware of. The names of some of these communities that are being developed. Some that I, as somebody who has lived in Jamaica, since I was born, I've never heard of these places. And the plans that are being submitted are as elaborate as those that you see in the capital city. So I definitely think that augurs well for the general developmental profile of Jamaica, to say that we're now going beyond just the Kingston, just the Montego Bay. And that also, I think, bodes well for future investors, future persons who wish to essentially get a slice of the pie, that they have a greater array of options. That's, for me personally, what I think excites me.
Gabby?
I'm going to build on that and say, really, it's only up from here, right? Even coming down and spending the weekend. Literally. Coming down here and spending the weekend in Negril, there's so many properties along the strip waterfront that are undeveloped and just waiting for somebody to turn it into something meaningful. Get creative and don't restrict yourself to the Kingston and Mobays of the country. With the investment that we're seeing in infrastructure, it is truly unlocking Jamaica's potential, and it is only going to get up from here. When you look across the Caribbean, we're still at some of the lowest prices per square foot, and we still have not really fully, Chair and I were talking about this earlier, entered that luxury market either. Even aside from luxury and people think residential, people think resort, they're also supporting industries that need to develop as well. So we need laundromats for these resorts. We need restaurants. We need experiences. We need, clean power plants. We need a lot of different supporting amenities, infrastructure, industries for a booming
Supermarkets,
man.
childcare.
So there's so much opportunity. But again, especially if you're coming from abroad and looking to come down here, don't just, wing it. Get into a relationship with the right professional and have them really explain the lay of the land to you and help you to make that strategic investment. Don't just put up and then ask questions later, because the realtors can guide you on that. They can say, okay, you want to develop in this area. This is what the demand in that area looks like. This is the price point that would be appropriate for that area so that you can run your numbers and do it wisely. So for me, I'm very, very bullish and opportunistic about the future of Jamaica. We have world-class professionals here. We have world-class regulations here. And we're going to have world-class real estate here too. We have some already, but there's so much potential for even more. So that's why I'm really excited, and that's why I've poured my heart, my life, my career into real estate in Jamaica.
As you mentioned, luxury, Gabby, and before I come to you, Andrew, I kind of have a issue with what some people describe as luxury.
We don't, it's not it. It's not what we think is luxury is not it. It's
you just paint it white and say it's luxury.
Yeah,
no. Is there a definition for what is luxury and what you can charge for what?
There's no set definition, but I think also, just to call out an elephant in the room, luxury also has to do with your levels of service and customer service. And so I think also, if we're going to be positioning ourselves for that, we have to make sure that not only our tourism professionals, but also all our professionals across the board are bearing in mind that your interactions with everybody is an advertisement for Jamaica, and that's what adds to the luxury experience. So if you're going to be sour when you're working at a restaurant and taking people's order, that doesn't help us to look luxury. Putting up a fancy new building with certain finishes, that's not luxury per se. It's an entire experience. And so I look forward to us getting that maturity. We're getting there. I'll tell you, we're definitely getting there. More and more people are taking chances and doing things that have never been done before. Pinnacle is a great example of that in Montego Bay. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that in the future to come.
So Andrew, last one to you. What excites you most about the future of Jamaican real estate?
Sitting at the table at this time, where we know where we are now, we know where we need to get to. Now, we're at a stage, we started with the school, Real Estate Training Institute, and that school is doing amazing things. So we are training the agents. So you want to go into real estate? The training is there. As soon as you finish the training, then we have continuous training, professional development for the agents. So once you have that going on, we have the regulation. They know that if they do something wrong, we're going to tap you on the finger and say, no. We need people who practice ethics or ethical. And so with that in mind, people who want to invest in Jamaica, they don't have to worry about, should I invest in this place and people can run away with my money and so on. No, we want a country where people feel safe, comfortable spending their money. And that's what the real estate board is about, providing that comfort for each and every one, right? So I'm glad to be there to ensure that all of us in here feel comfortable investing in what we call our rock.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. with that said, open it up to questions. Do we have any questions in the room? Was I wrong? No, we have a question. Somebody's coming to the mic.
Hello, I'm Shereen Beltrambly. Question, where is the trust held for the developer?
Okay, so I think I'll take that question. So under the applicable legislation, which is the Real Estate Dealers and Developers Act, the trust monies received by the developer are required to be held at an account at an authorized financial institution in Jamaica. And under the legislation, authorized financial institution has a particular definition. For those of you who are perhaps more au fait with the banking sector in Jamaica, it encompasses the commercial banks and the merchant banks. Those who are the holders of licenses under the Banking Services Act. Building societies, which are incorporated under the Building Societies Act. I see that one of them is a sponsor for the conference this week. As well as deposit-taking institutions were incorporated under the, or were regulated rather under the definition of the previous Financial Institution Act. So for those of you who are, as I said, aware of the banking sector in Jamaica, you would know that that list of entities is not very long. It really and truly encompasses, for the most part, the larger commercial banks, and the two major building societies. But that is just for an additional layer of protection for the purchasers' funds, because essentially the intention behind that provision is that the actual institution where the funds are held are also regulated under the auspices of the Bank of Jamaica and all the attendant legislation that I referred to earlier. So it's not that the monies are being held in a vault or a safe on, in the developer's home. It's placed into an account. And in fact, the financial institutions themselves actually have obligations with respect to the trust funds under the Real Estate Dealers and Developers Act, because they are required to ensure that all withdrawals that the developer can and does make from that trust account are in accordance with the law. So all the prerequisites under the legislation that need to be in place, for example, the board's charge being lodged on the land to protect purchasers' monies or money's worth in respect of their investment, all of those things are positive obligations on the part of the authorized financial institution, so that there's an additional layer of protection for purchasers' funds. I hope that answered the question.
Yes.
Okay.
And a follow-up question to that one. A follow-up question to that one. What's in place to ensure that the developer has the trust in place?
Oh, I see. All right. So that's a good question. So in addition to the obligations that the authorized financial institution has, the developer actually has obligations to report on the trust account to the real estate board on a timely basis. Whenever required to by the real estate board's inspectors, the developer is required to essentially produce records from the trust account of all the ingress and egress. So all of the deposits, all withdrawals, and all of the documentation that accompanies those deposits. For example, the developer is required to keep a record and communicate that record with the board of which prepayment contract each deposit relates to ensure that this amount by contract is required to be paid over by the depositor, and this is the amount that actually made its way into the trust account.
Yeah.
And if the developer fails to adhere to that requirement, there are consequences under the legislation. And I can even tell you, failure to produce the trust account information is actually a criminal offense under the radar.
Yep.
Next question.
Can I ask
So
one?
let's have somebody else first, and then if we have time, we come back to you.
Thanks for your questions.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Danielle. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. I don't know if I need to put this down. A little short. My name is Danielle. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. I'm a realtor, licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I'm not one to normally come up and talk in front of a lot of people, but I think Mr. James deserves his flowers publicly. I was under contract on a property about 1.5 years ago, and it was a fixer-upper. So property was done, but the inside, wasn't finished. So I was going to buy it and renovate it, and it was a renovation loan. I had to get somebody gave it to, it was off market. Somebody just told me, oh, I have a friend who wants to sell XYZ, and the seller did not want to pay a real estate agent like my agent. So I was just going to take care of my agent on my own. I still had, good advice in the background. So I had to get a special kind of valuation because it was a rehab loan. One was I had a quantity surveyor who came to see how much it would cost to complete the project. And then with the, is that okay? Okay. Thank you. I'm height challenged. Thank you. And then with the valuation, I had to get a special valuation, which told me how much the property was worth as is before any work was done to it. And then an after repair value. So once everything was done, how much it would cost. But anyway, I hired Mr. James's firm, and he came in and did an excellent job. And this was from overseas. So not only did he work with the quantity surveyor to see how much work needed to be done, the price that the seller wanted me to pay once he was done with the valuation, the real price was only really 50% of that. Right. So he saved me a lot of money and, potentially getting in a really bad deal.
All right, big up Andrew.
Get the right professional.
Testimonial. Yes, get the right professionals.
Now I'm like challenged. Okay. So I'm Chana from New York. I wanted to know how could one, once you acquire these properties, you're doing Airbnb, you're advertising your short-term rental. What's the best way to partner with corporate entities, like realtors who have connections maybe with corporate entities, to actually market your place so that you're not relying just on Airbnb and verbal and so forth?
You want to say that one?
What's the best way to partner with corporate entities?
Well, I think I'll tie the question just to go back to the Real Estate Dealers and Developers Act to say that property managers in Jamaica is a type of real estate business. And so if you're managing properties for persons, you have to have a license to do that. So actually nobody can come and market your Airbnb for you or manage your Airbnb for you if they don't have a license. There are a lot of people doing it without a license, but under the definition of the act, once you are managing somebody's property, soliciting rentals or sales, and you're doing that for money, you need to have a license under the act or you are committing a criminal offense. So persons who are managing people's Airbnbs without a property management license, they are currently committing a criminal offense. So that's the first thing. So I would say that you want to make sure that if anybody you're asking to manage it for you is actually requisitely licensed and experienced to do that for you. Outside of that, in terms of companies that can advertise that for you, that's a tricky space because, and I'll just be real here, a lot of people are playing in the gray area because they're saying, okay, well, I'm promoting a vacation stay, so it's not really promoting a property for sale or rental, but it really is encroaching into the area of real estate business, and eventually it's going to be clamped down on by the real estate board. So you have a lot of persons doing that, but you're not really allowed to do that. So, you can market your own property all day long. I would suggest to you to get if you want to get a social media manager, a PR person to come in and create that website and look and feel for you. We have lots of them and they do an excellent job in Jamaica. Big up to our creative industry here. But again, you can't really give somebody that to run with for you if they're not an actually licensed property manager.
We have time for probably one. We have 2 more people in line. All right, we'll take those 2 and then we'll leave it there.
Hi. Hello. I'm Winsome. At the beginning, you were talking about having a realtor represent you. But what I wanted to know is, are there any protections? Well, first of all, does Jamaica allow like the realtor to represent the seller and the buyer at the same time? And if so, are there any protections for the person purchasing that they don't get railroaded that way?
Sure, that's a great question, actually. And to just take the question head on, we do allow dual representation in Jamaica. But technically speaking, really and truly, you can't really dually represent somebody. So first of all, for attorneys, it's absolutely not allowed. An attorney can only represent one person in a transaction. So if you're doing a deal and somebody says, don't worry, my attorney can act for both of us, absolute garbage, don't do that. And that attorney is breaking the law. In terms of realtors now, as I said earlier, all of our members are bound by a code of ethics. It comes from the National Association of Realtors. So the same code of ethics that binds realtors in the US binds us too. And it has guidelines for how we're supposed to deal with persons in a dual representation scenario. But if I am the listing agent and you come to me as a purchaser to come to me directly, even though I'm the listing agent, I have to disclose to you that I am the listing agent. And so if there's any conflicts that arise or problems that arise in that transaction, I have to take the side of the seller. So I have to give you that disclaimer upfront in writing from the get-go. And if at any point in time in that transaction you say, you know what, I prefer to be independently represented by another realtor, we are to allow you no bad blood, no harm done to go and get that other independent person to step in. There are some advantages speaking directly to the listing agent, which, that's why some people choose to do that because, they're generally speaking, sometimes just being real, they're going to be able to give you better insight because it's their listing. But really and truly, if you want fully independent representation, you have the right to say, well, I want to be represented by my realtor and I prefer not to go straight through you.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because what we have seen in the United States is when something like that happens, it's a way to marginalize people, sneak in gentrification. It creates a lot of problems.
Totally understand. And also, as Mr. Johnson said earlier, if somebody does that to you and somebody is not acting in your best interest, because remember, real estate agents, we're licensed professionals, so we owe you a fiduciary duty of care. And so we are liable in negligence if we breach that fiduciary duty. So not only do we have that fiduciary duty, but you can also report them to the real estate board. We don't have a reporting culture in Jamaica, but sometimes it's important because sometimes we need to know who bad actors are. So you can report them to the real estate board, and you can even go above and beyond that, and you can report them to the Realtors Association of Jamaica too, because we also have a disciplinary process for our members internally. And if we decide that that disciplinary process is going to lead to us expelling or suspending a member, we tell the real estate board, and it can affect your ability to keep your license with the real estate board. So where you see somebody acting unethically, it is in the best interest of our industry and Jamaica to report that person.
Final question from the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Damali Alexander, born in Brooklyn, now here in Kingston. I have a question as it relates to the new developments. who is the governing body that ensures that the work being done is up to code and standards?
Yeah.
Right, so those would be the local planning authorities in the forms of the municipal corporations, formerly known as the parish councils.
Yeah. So maybe I could just quickly explain the relationships there. So there are 3 legal frameworks at play when you're buying into a property that's being developed. They have to be get their approvals and licenses from the local planning authority, which is usually the municipal corporation of that area. So that's like St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, St. Anne Municipal Corporation, etc. So you get your licenses from them. You also have to register with the real estate board. So the real estate board is really looking at your use of funds. You can only touch purchasers' money for certain things. You have to be filing copies of your trust account, your agreements for sale, advertising in a certain way, and following those requirements. And then you also have your contract, your agreement for sale, which is a contract where if it's breached, you're now looking at going to court or other remedies in contract, their mediation, etc., to enforce those things. So really the municipal corporation, insofar as the Building Act and the Building Code, they are required to go and do periodic inspections of the property as it's being done to see that, okay, the foundation was poured properly, the cement is up to a certain standard, etc. The real estate board, before you actually get your unit and the keys and your title, they go in to say, okay, you've issued practical completion certificates. Is the road in? Is the unit actually really practically complete? So they do another inspection. But I'm just going to throw in here that if you are buying a pre-construction property, you should try your best to go there and inspect it yourself and make sure that that handover visit, it's super important. If you're not a construction person, my ladies out there, if you don't have a guy to come with you, get somebody to come that knows construction and can do that walkthrough with you, that's going to be able to eyeball the defects and make sure that your lawyer writes to the developer to say, we did our handover inspection, these are the defects that need to be dealt with within the defects liability period. And there are also certain defects, a lot of people don't know this, that are structural, that go to the heart of the contract, that have no defects liability period. So those you're looking at limitation periods of like 6 years, right? So if the foundation or cracking in the wall, leaking, certain things that are very structural in nature, those things actually don't have a defects liability period that expires after 6 months.
Wow, very knowledgeable, a wealth of information. Thank you so much to our esteemed panel.